Sarah Chen stepped out of London Heathrow Airport's Terminal 5 with stars in her eyes and her phone already in hand. The 23-year-old social media influencer from Vancouver had been dreaming of this trip for months. Not just because London was beautiful, but because she saw it as her big chance to grow her following from 100,000 to the coveted 1 million mark. The early morning air was crisp as she pulled her bright pink suitcase toward the taxi stand. Other travelers rushed past her, but Sarah took her time, recording every moment for her social media. First steps in London. She whispered excitedly to her phone, making sure to capture the iconic black taxi in the background. During the ride to her hotel near Buckingham Palace, Sarah scrolled through her social media feed. Her latest video back in Vancouver had only gotten 2,000 views, nowhere near enough for someone trying to become a full-time influencer. She needed something bigger, something that would make people stop scrolling and pay attention. London, with its perfect mix of history and tourist attractions, seemed like the perfect place to make that happen. "First time in London?" the taxi driver asked, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. "Yes, I'm here to create content," Sarah replied, still focused on her phone. She didn't notice the slight frown on the driver's face at her words. She was too busy planning her first video, already imagining the views rolling in. After checking into her small but expensive hotel room, Sarah didn't even take time to unpack. Instead, she freshened up her makeup, changed into a bright yellow dress that would stand out in videos, and headed straight for the streets. Her camera roll quickly filled up with typical tourist content, posing with red phone booths, pointing at Big Ben, and making peace signs in front of random buildings she thought looked important. But as the day went on, Sarah's excitement started to fade. Her live streaming session only had 50 viewers, and most of her photos were getting the same boring responses she always got back home. This wasn't what she had planned. She needed something different, something that would make her stand out from the thousands of other travel influencers in London. Walking near Buckingham Palace, Sarah noticed how other tourists were gathering around the royal guards. These guards, standing straight and serious in their red uniforms and tall black hats, caught her attention. She stopped to watch as tourists posed next to them, trying to make them smile or move. Sarah pulled up TikTok and searched for Royal Guard videos. Her eyes widened as she saw the view counts. 2 million, 5 million, some even reaching 10 million views. Videos of tourists interacting with the guards were everywhere, and people couldn't seem to get enough of them. But most of these videos were the same old things. Tourists just standing next to the guards or waving at them. As she watched the guards, an idea started forming in her mind. She needed to do something different, something that nobody had done before. Something that would make her video stand out from all the others. The more she thought about it, the more excited she became about her plan. That evening, back in her hotel room, Sarah spent hours watching videos of royal guards. She learned that they weren't allowed to move or react while on duty. She read comments from people saying how funny it was when tourists tried to make them break character. But all the videos she saw were too simple, too boring. She wanted to create something more dramatic, something that would definitely go viral. Opening her laptop, she started writing down ideas for her video. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she planned every detail. She didn't notice how some of her ideas might be disrespectful or even illegal. All she could think about was getting those views, becoming famous, and finally achieving her dream of being a top influencer. Just before midnight, Sarah checked the weather forecast for the next day. It would be warm and sunny, perfect for her plan. She set multiple alarms on her phone, wanting to be one of the first tourists at Buckingham Palace the next morning. As she finally lay down to sleep, her mind was full of dreams of viral fame, sponsorship deals, and millions of followers. Little did she know that her quest for social media fame was about to lead her down a path she never expected. 3 days into her London trip, Sarah Chen sat on her hotel bed, staring at her phone with growing frustration. Her latest video, a carefully planned piece where she pretended to get lost in the Tower of London, had only gotten 3,000 views. The comments were mostly from her regular followers back home, not the new British audience she had hoped to capture. "This isn't working," she muttered to herself, deleting yet another failed post. She had already spent nearly half of her savings on this trip, choosing an expensive hotel near Buckingham Palace specifically for content creation. But so far, none of her videos had gone viral. Her sponsorship deals back in Vancouver wouldn't last long if she couldn't increase her following soon. Sarah opened her analytics page and felt her heart sink. Instead of growing, her follower count had actually dropped by a few hundred over the past 3 days. She threw herself back on the bed, her eyes filling with tears of frustration. The pressure of creating viral content was getting to her. Back home, her parents had given her 6 months to make it as an influencer before she had to get a real job. 4 of those months had already passed. Wiping her eyes, she decided to take a walk to clear her head. The streets of London were busy with tourists, all seemingly having a better time than her. As she passed a group of teenagers excitedly showing each other something on their phones, she stopped to listen. "Did you see that Royal Guard video?" One of them laughed. "The one where the tourist trips and the guard doesn't even blink. It got like 20 million views." Sarah's attention snapped to full alert. She quickly pulled out her phone and searched for the video they were talking about. Sure enough, there it was. A simple 30-second clip of someone accidentally tripping near a royal guard, and the guard maintaining perfect composure. The view count was now at 22 million. 22 million, she whispered to herself, her mind racing. For just a simple trip? She spent the next hour sitting on a park bench, watching every Royal Guard video she could find. The more she watched, the more she noticed a pattern. Videos where tourists tried to interact with the guards always got more views than regular tourist content. But most people just waved or danced in front of them, nothing really spectacular. Walking back toward her hotel, Sarah passed a small convenience store. She stopped, looking at the display of water bottles in the window. An idea started forming in her mind, something that would definitely be more interesting than just waving or dancing. Something that nobody had done before. Inside the store, she picked up the largest bottle of water they had. As she stood in line to pay, she pulled up her phone and checked the weather forecast again. Tomorrow would be another hot day, perfect for her plan. She imagined how the video would look. The stoic guard, the splash of water, the shocked gasps from the crowd. It would be dramatic, different, and definitely viral worthy. Back in her hotel room, Sarah spent hours planning every detail. She chose her outfit carefully, a bright blue dress that would stand out in videos. She tested different camera angles using the water bottle and a pillow, making sure she knew exactly how to film it for maximum impact. She even practiced what she would say in the video. "It's just water." She reassured herself as a small voice in her head suggested this might not be a good idea. "It's hot outside anyway. The guard might even appreciate it." She pushed away any thoughts about consequences or respect. In her mind, this was just content creation, just another video for her feed. That night, Sarah scheduled posts across all her social media accounts, building anticipation for a huge surprise coming tomorrow. She set up her live streaming software and made sure all her batteries were fully charged. Everything had to be perfect. As she lay in bed, Sarah imagined how her life would change after tomorrow. She pictured herself hitting 1 million followers, getting calls from big brands, maybe even appearing on morning TV shows to talk about her viral moment. The possible consequences of her planned prank never entered her mind. All she could see was fame, success, and the validation she desperately craved. Just before falling asleep, she set multiple alarms for the morning. She wanted to arrive early, scope out the best position, and make sure everything would go according to plan. Tomorrow would be her big day, the day she finally became a real influencer. Little did she know that fame would indeed find her, but not in the way she had hoped. The morning sun beat down on the streets of London as Sarah Chen positioned herself near Buckingham Palace. It was barely 10 a.m., but the temperature was already climbing. She had chosen her spot carefully, standing close enough to the royal guard to get a good shot, but far enough that she could quickly move if needed. Her hand clutched the large water bottle inside her designer tote bag. "Hey guys, it's your girl Sarah," she whispered excitedly to her phone camera, starting her live stream. "We're about to do something amazing that no one has ever done before." Her viewer count slowly ticked up, 50, 75, 100 people watching. It wasn't much, but Sarah was sure that would change soon. The royal guard stood perfectly still at his post, his red uniform bright against the palace gates. His black bearskin hat added nearly 2 feet to his height, making him an imposing figure. Sweat was visible on his face, but he maintained his famous stoic expression. Other tourists milled around, taking regular photos and selfies. Sarah's heart pounded as she moved closer. She had rehearsed this moment countless times in her hotel room, but now that she was here, her hands were shaking. A small voice in her head screamed at her to stop, but she pushed it away. She was too committed now. Her followers were waiting. Some were already commenting, asking what she was planning. "Okay, guys," she said to her phone, her voice trembling with nervous excitement. "Watch this. It's so hot today, and I think our guard friend needs some cooling off." She pulled out the water bottle, making sure her camera captured everything. Her viewer count had reached 200, still not viral numbers, but she was sure that would change once people saw what she was about to do. Time seemed to slow down as Sarah uncapped the water bottle. She took 3 more steps toward the guard, her blue dress bright in the morning sun. A few nearby tourists noticed her unusual behavior and started watching. Some even pulled out their phones, sensing something was about to happen. "This is for TikTok," Sarah announced loudly, and before anyone could react, she lifted the bottle high and poured its entire contents over the Royal Guard's uniform. The water splashed across his red jacket, soaking the fabric instantly. Some droplets sparkled in the sunlight as they fell, creating what Sarah thought would be a perfect slow-motion shot. For one brief moment, everything was silent. The guard remained absolutely still, water dripping from his uniform. Sarah's triumphant smile froze on her face as she waited for some reaction, laughter, gasps, anything. But what happened next was nothing like she had imagined. "Halt!" A commanding voice broke the silence. 2 police officers seemed to materialize out of nowhere, moving with practiced efficiency. Sarah's live stream was still running as one officer grabbed her arm firmly but professionally. Her phone slipped from her hand, clattering to the pavement but still recording. "What? Wait!" Sarah's voice rose in panic. "It's just a prank. For social media." The second officer picked up her phone, ending the live stream that had now jumped to over 1,000 viewers. The crowd that had gathered was no longer taking photos of the guard, but of Sarah being detained. She could hear their disapproving murmurs and see their shocked faces. "Miss, you're under arrest for assault on a Queen's Guard and interference with a protected officer in the course of his duties," the first officer stated firmly. Sarah's face drained of color as the words "under arrest" echoed in her mind. The Royal Guard remained at his post, as professional as ever, though water still dripped from his uniform. Another guard had already emerged to replace him, allowing him to go change into dry clothing. The seamless procedure showed how well prepared they were for any type of disruption. As Sarah was led away to a waiting police car, her designer bag and phone now in evidence bags, reality finally began to sink in. This wasn't Vancouver, where her small pranks were usually met with eye rolls and mild annoyance. This was London, and she had just assaulted a member of one of the world's most respected military units. Through the car window, she could see people already on their phones, no doubt sharing videos of her arrest. Her viral moment had arrived, but instead of fame and fortune, she was headed to a police station. The last thing she saw before the police car pulled away was her phone being sealed in an evidence bag, the same phone that contained the live stream that would soon make her infamous rather than famous. The fluorescent lights of the police station buzzed overhead as Sarah Chen sat in an interview room, her designer dress now wrinkled and her makeup smeared from wiping away tears. The room was small and plain, with just a table, 3 chairs, and a recording device in the center. It was nothing like the bright, cheerful settings of her usual social media videos. "Please state your name and nationality for the record," the female officer across from her said, pressing the record button. Another officer stood quietly in the corner, taking notes. "Sarah Chen, Canadian," Sarah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Her usual confident, camera-ready personality had disappeared completely. "Do you understand why you've been arrested, Miss Chen?" the officer asked, spreading out several photographs on the table. They showed different angles of Sarah pouring water on the Royal Guard, captured by various tourist phones. Sarah felt sick looking at them. The triumphant smile on her face in the photos now seemed foolish and cruel. I thought it would be funny," Sarah mumbled, staring at her hands. "For my social media, I didn't think it was such a big deal." The officer's expression remained professional but stern. "Miss Chen, the Queen's Guard are active-duty military personnel. What you did today is classified as assault on a serviceman in the execution of his duty. This is a serious offense under British law." Sarah's stomach dropped. The word assault echoed in her head. She had never thought of it that way. In her mind, it had just been a harmless prank for views. Your actions also compromised security protocols, the officer continued. The guard you assaulted had to leave his post to change his uniform. During a shift change, the guards are more vulnerable. You created a security risk at one of Britain's most important locations. Tears started falling again as the reality of her situation became clear. The officer pushed a box of tissues across the table, but her tone remained firm. "We've checked your phone, Miss Chen. Your live stream had over 1,000 viewers when we stopped it. The incident has already been uploaded to multiple social media platforms. The palace security team will be making an official statement." Sarah's head snapped up. "My phone? But I need that for my work, my followers." "Your phone is being held as evidence," the officer interrupted. "And I should inform you that your tourist visa may be reviewed as a result of this incident." Just then, there was a knock on the door. The second officer stepped out briefly and returned with some papers. "The guard's official statement has arrived, ma'am," he said, handing them to his colleague. Sarah watched anxiously as the female officer read through the papers. The guard she had soaked was a 24-year-old soldier named James Harrison, who had served in the military for 6 years. He had remained at his post for nearly 10 minutes while soaking wet before his replacement arrived, following protocol perfectly despite the discomfort she had caused him. "Lance Corporal Harrison has provided a full statement," the officer said, looking up from the papers. "He was wearing a ceremonial uniform that costs over £1,500 to produce. The water damage will require specialized cleaning." Sarah's face paled further. She hadn't considered the cost of the uniform. Everything she had planned so carefully was now falling apart, revealing consequences she had never imagined. "Your court appearance has been scheduled for tomorrow morning," the officer continued. "Given the public nature of the offense and the evidence available, the Crown Prosecution Service has decided to proceed quickly. You'll be held here until then." "Tomorrow?" Sarah gasped. "But I can't. I need to call my parents. I need a lawyer." "You have the right to legal representation, and we'll provide you with a duty solicitor," the officer explained. "You're also entitled to one phone call. Would you like to make that now?" Sarah nodded numbly. As she was led to the phone, she caught a glimpse of a TV in the staff area. Her stomach lurched as she saw herself on the screen, the water bottle in her hands, about to make the biggest mistake of her life. The news ticker below read, "Tourist arrested for assaulting Queen's Guard. Social media stunt goes wrong." Standing at the phone, Sarah's fingers trembled as she dialed her parents' number in Vancouver. It would be early morning there. How could she explain to them that their daughter, who they had warned about the dangers of social media obsession, was now in a London police station, about to face criminal charges? The phone rang, each second feeling like an eternity as she waited for someone to answer. The Westminster Magistrates' Court stood imposing and grey in the morning light. Sarah Chen sat in the waiting area, wearing the same blue dress from yesterday, now creased from her night in the holding cell. Next to her sat Mr. Thompson, the duty solicitor assigned to her case. He was reviewing papers while occasionally glancing at his watch. "Remember what we discussed," Mr. Thompson said quietly. "Plead guilty, show genuine remorse, and emphasize that you understand the seriousness of your actions. It's your best chance at a lighter sentence." Sarah nodded weakly. Her parents had been on the phone with lawyers all night in Vancouver, but there was nothing they could do from so far away. The court date had been set too quickly for them to fly to London. She had never felt more alone. "The Crown takes these cases very seriously," Mr. Thompson continued, "especially since your video has gone viral." Sarah's stomach twisted at those words. Her dream of going viral had come true in the worst possible way. The duty solicitor had shown her the news headlines. "Tourist attacks Queen's Guard for social media fame," and "TikTok prankster faces British justice." Her original live stream, cut off during her arrest, had been viewed millions of times. "All rise." The court usher's voice snapped Sarah back to reality. She stood on shaky legs as the magistrate entered the courtroom. The room was packed with journalists and members of the public, all eager to see the tourist who had dared to assault a Queen's Guard. The prosecutor, a stern-faced woman in her 50s, stood first. "Your Honor," the defendant, Sarah Chen, is charged with assault on a serviceman in the execution of his duty and causing a public nuisance at a protected site. The Crown presents evidence that this was not a momentary lapse in judgment, but a premeditated act for social media attention. Sarah watched in horror as the prosecutor played various clips from her social media accounts. Her live stream leading up to the incident, her earlier posts building anticipation for her big surprise. The actual moment when she poured water on Lance Corporal Harrison, the footage seemed endless. Furthermore, the prosecutor continued, the defendant's actions created a serious security breach. The guard's uniform, weighing approximately 12 pounds when dry, became waterlogged. This could have significantly impaired his ability to respond to genuine threats. The cost of specialized cleaning for the ceremonial uniform is £1,500. Mr. Thompson stood next for the defense. Your Honor, my client acknowledges the seriousness of her actions. She is a young content creator who made a terrible error in judgment. She has no previous criminal record and is prepared to make full restitution for any damages. The magistrate's face remained impassive throughout both presentations. When it was Sarah's turn to speak, she stood on trembling legs. I'm so sorry, she began, her voice cracking. I never thought about the consequences. I didn't think about Lance Corporal Harrison as a real person with an important job. I just thought about views and followers. I know now how wrong and disrespectful that was. The magistrate studied her for a long moment before speaking. Miss Chen, your actions show a disturbing trend in modern society, the pursuit of internet fame at the expense of common decency and respect. The Queen's Guard are not props for social media entertainment. They are trained military personnel performing a vital security function. Sarah felt tears rolling down her cheeks as the magistrate continued. I have reviewed character references sent by your employer in Vancouver and your university professors. They speak of a young woman who is normally responsible and respectful. However, the premeditated nature of this offense cannot be ignored. The room fell silent as the magistrate prepared to announce the sentence. Sarah could hear camera shutters clicking and journalists scribbling notes. This moment, like the incident itself, would soon be all over the internet, but this time she wished no one was watching. Before I pass sentence, the magistrate said, I must ask, do you have anything else to say in your defense? Sarah looked at the faces around her, the stern prosecutor, the concerned duty solicitor, the curious journalists, and the dignified magistrate. In that moment, all her dreams of social media fame seemed hollow and childish compared to the gravity of what she had done. No, Your Honor, she replied quietly. I have no excuse for what I did. I'm just very, very sorry. The magistrate nodded, picked up his papers, and prepared to deliver the sentence that would change Sarah's life forever. The magistrate's voice filled the silent courtroom as he delivered his verdict. Sarah Chen stood perfectly still, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, as she listened to the words that would determine her fate. Miss Chen, the magistrate began, his tone firm but not unkind. This court has considered several factors in determining your sentence. On one hand, you have no previous criminal record, and you have shown genuine remorse for your actions. On the other hand, the premeditated nature of this offense and its potential security implications cannot be overlooked. Sarah felt her legs growing weak. Mr. Thompson, her duty solicitor, placed a steadying hand on her arm. The sentence of this court is as follows. The magistrate continued. First, you are hereby fined £5,000 for the assault on Lance Corporal Harrison. This includes £1,500 for damages to the ceremonial uniform and £3,500 in punitive damages. A small gasp escaped Sarah's lips. £5,000, nearly all of her remaining savings. But the magistrate wasn't finished. Second, you are sentenced to 30 days in custody, suspended for 12 months. This means you will not go to prison immediately, but if you commit any offense in the next 12 months, you will serve those 30 days in addition to any new sentence. The journalists in the courtroom scribbled furiously in their notebooks. Sarah could already imagine the headlines they would write. Third, the magistrate's voice grew even more serious. You are required to make a public apology. This will be recorded here in court and made available to media outlets. You will acknowledge the seriousness of your actions and their potential consequences. Sarah nodded numbly. Public humiliation seemed a fitting punishment for someone who had chased public attention so desperately. Finally, the magistrate paused, looking directly at Sarah. This court recommends to the Home Office that your tourist visa be revoked immediately. You will have 48 hours to leave the United Kingdom. Furthermore, you will be banned from entering the United Kingdom for a period of 5 years. The room erupted in whispers. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Banned from the UK for 5 years? She hadn't expected that. Miss Chen, the magistrate continued over the murmurs, I want you to understand why this sentence is necessary. The Queen's Guard are not tourist attractions. They are highly trained military personnel with serious responsibilities. Your actions, broadcast live on social media, risked encouraging others to commit similar offenses. Sarah watched as the court clerk prepared the paperwork. Everything felt surreal, like she was watching it happen to someone else. You have 1 hour to record your public apology, the magistrate informed her. After that, you will be escorted to collect your belongings from your hotel. Immigration officers will ensure you book a flight home within the 48-hour deadline. The next hour passed in a blur. Sarah found herself standing before a camera in a small room at the court, reading from a prepared statement. Her voice trembled as she spoke. I, Sarah Chen, sincerely apologize for my thoughtless and disrespectful actions toward Lance Corporal Harrison of the Queen's Guard. What I did was not a prank or a joke. It was assault on a serving member of the military performing his duties. I am deeply ashamed of my behavior and the security risk I created. To anyone who saw my video, please learn from my mistake. The Queen's Guard deserve our respect, not our attempts at viral fame. After recording the apology, Sarah was led out of the court through a side entrance. Journalists shouted questions, cameras flashed, but she kept her head down. A police officer escorted her to a waiting car that would take her to her hotel. In the back of the car, Sarah finally checked her phone, which had been returned to her after being held as evidence. The notification numbers were overwhelming. Thousands of comments, messages, and mentions across all her social media accounts. Her follower count had indeed skyrocketed, just as she had wanted. But now each new follower felt like another witness to her shame. As the car moved through London's streets, Sarah caught a final glimpse of Buckingham Palace in the distance. The grand building that had once represented her dreams of social media fame now stood as a monument to her biggest mistake. In just 48 hours, she would be back in Vancouver, her influencer career in ruins, banned from returning to the UK until she was nearly 30 years old. The magnitude of what she had lost, her money, her reputation, her freedom to travel, all for a few seconds of social media attention, finally hit her. Sarah Chen, who had wanted so desperately to be famous, was now infamous instead. 6 months had passed since Sarah Chen's infamous London incident. The Vancouver winter rain tapped against her bedroom window as she sat at her desk, staring at her laptop screen. Her once pristine influencer setup, the ring light, professional microphone, and carefully curated background, had been replaced by a simple webcam and plain white wall. Hi everyone, she began, recording what would be her first video since returning from London. Many of you know me as that girl who poured water on the Queen's Guard. Today, I want to talk about what happened and what I've learned. Sarah had spent the last 6 months working at her parents' restaurant, saving money to pay off the £5,000 fine. Her previously manicured nails now showed the signs of honest work, cooking, cleaning, and serving customers. The job she had once considered beneath her had become a source of quiet pride. The day I got back from London, she continued in her video, I had over 500,000 new followers. But they weren't there to support me. They were there to watch my downfall. The memes, the jokes, the angry messages. I deserved all of it. She paused, taking a sip of water. A simple action that now carried different meaning for her. The viral fame she had chased so desperately had come at a terrible price. Her original video had been viewed over 50 million times, spawning countless reaction videos, news stories, and even a BBC documentary about social media culture. Lance Corporal Harrison, the guard I assaulted, sent me a message through his commanding officer, Sarah revealed to the camera. He said he hoped I learned something from this experience. He didn't ask for an apology or express anger. He just hoped I learned. That message changed something in me. The past 6 months had been a journey of reflection. Sarah had deleted most of her social media accounts, keeping only YouTube for this final message. Her old sponsorship deals had disappeared overnight. Fashion brands that once sent her free clothes now used her story as a cautionary tale in their influencer guidelines. I've received hundreds of messages from other content creators, she continued, telling me they almost did similar things for views. Some admitted to planning dangerous pranks or disrespectful stunts. My story made them think twice. Maybe that's the only good thing to come from this. Sarah stood up and walked to her window, letting the camera follow her. On her desk lay a letter from the British Embassy, a formal reminder of her 5-year ban from entering the United Kingdom. She had framed it as a reminder of her biggest mistake and greatest lesson. My parents were right, she admitted, turning back to the camera. They always said that real success comes from hard work, not shortcuts. I thought being an influencer was an easy path to fame and fortune. Now I understand that any career, whether it's social media, running a restaurant, or being a Queen's Guard, requires respect, dedication, and integrity. The restaurant work had given her unexpected perspective. Each day, she saw how her parents created genuine connections with their customers, built trust in their community, and took pride in their service. It was everything her influencer career hadn't been. Tomorrow, I start my first semester at business school, Sarah revealed. My parents have offered to help me learn the restaurant business properly. No shortcuts this time. No desperate grabs for attention. Just honest work and genuine growth. She sat back down at her desk, ready to conclude her final video. The subscriber count on her screen showed only a fraction of her peak numbers, but these were real followers interested in her journey of redemption. To anyone chasing viral fame, she said, looking directly into the camera, please learn from my mistake. No video is worth disrespecting others. No amount of views is worth compromising your integrity. And no social media fame is worth losing your real-world freedoms. With steady hands, Sarah reached for the mouse to end the recording. As she did, her phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had shared her old video again, but this time she didn't feel the need to look. The likes, shares, and views that had once meant everything to her now meant nothing. Host, she whispered, clicking the upload button on her final video. Sarah Chen, former viral sensation and cautionary tale, was ready to begin her new chapter, one built on respect, hard work, and real connections rather than fleeting internet fame.